Hello and welcome. Thank you for choosing to spend this quiet time with us. This audiobook novel is crafted as a gentle companion, designed to help weave an atmosphere of peace around you, offering a soft space to unwind at the end of your day or whenever you seek a sanctuary of calm. In Sunbeam Patterns on the Pantry Floor, we invite you to step into the quiet comfort of the Stone Floor Cottage. Here we join Clara in her gentle observation of the morning unfolding, noticing the simple beauty in the way sunlight falls across familiar surfaces and the quiet rhythm of preparing a warm cup of tea. It's an audiobook novel dedicated to the deep tranquility found in stillness and presence. Should you find comfort here and wish for more moments like this, perhaps consider liking and subscribing before you settle in fully and set your device aside. It helps others discover this peaceful space too. For now, please find a comfortable position, allow yourself to relax, and let us begin the gentle journey into Sunbeam Patterns on the Pantry Floor. Chapter 1, First Light. The very first suggestion of dawn arrived not as a bright announcement, but as a subtle dilution of the night's deep ink. Outside the east-facing window of the small bedroom, the darkness seemed to thin, softening around the edges of the window frame. Inside the Stone Floor Cottage, the air remained still, holding the cool peace of the receding night. It carried a faint, clean trace of wood smoke from the hearth, long since cooled, a gentle memory of yesterday's warmth, mingling with the scent of old wood and dried lavender, tucked somewhere unseen. The silence wasn't empty, but full, the quiet settling of the old house, the almost imperceptible hum that underlies profound stillness. Within the simple bed, beneath layers of soft, well-worn linen, Clara stirred. The movement was slight, less a decision to wake and more a natural response to the shifting energy of the coming day, like a leaf turning towards an unseen sun. The sheets felt cool against her skin, smooth and comforting. For a moment, she lay perfectly still, breathing softly, the gentle rise and fall of her chest almost blending with the quiet pulse of the house itself. The light outside remained pearlescent, barely illuminating the familiar shapes of the room, the simple wooden dresser, the outline of a chair draped with clothing laid out for the day. No sharp edges yet, only soft forms emerging from the gloom. Slowly, deliberately, Clara pushed back the layers of bedding. The movement was unhurried, mindful. The air in the room touched her arms, cool but not cold, carrying the promise of the morning. She swung her legs over the side of the bed, her bare feet meeting the wide planks of the wooden floor. The floorboards were smooth underfoot, worn by years of passage, cool to the touch, but not unpleasantly so. It was a familiar grounding sensation, the first physical contact with the house each day. She sat there for a beat, letting her senses adjust, her gaze resting softly on the window where the light was slowly, almost imperceptibly, gathering strength. Rising now, her movements remained fluid and gentle. She padded softly across the floor, the wood grain a subtle texture beneath her soles. Each step was quiet, absorbed by the thick walls and the inherent stillness of the cottage. She moved toward the bedroom door, her hand reaching out for the simple wooden handle. It felt familiar in her grasp, smooth and slightly rounded from use. Opening the door revealed the small hallway, still steeped in shadow, leading towards the heart of the cottage, the kitchen and living space. The air here felt perhaps a fraction cooler, holding the quietude of the main room. She walked down the short hallway, her silhouette framed briefly by the growing light from the bedroom behind her. The wooden floor continued here, each board possessing its own subtle character, slight variations in level and texture that her feet knew without thought. There was no rush in her steps, only a steady, quiet progression towards the kitchen. The house seemed to breathe around her, a living entity settling into the rhythm of a new day. The faint sounds were those of peace, the subtle creak of a floorboard settling further, the distant, almost imagined sigh of the wind brushing against the sturdy outer walls. Entering the main room, the space felt larger, though still modest. The furniture, a simple sofa, a sturdy table, bookshelves lining one wall, remained largely in silhouette against the slightly brighter light filtering through the larger window opposite the kitchen area. The kitchen itself was a continuation of this space, marked by a change in flooring near the pantry entrance, where cool stone took over from the wood. The air here held the faintest echo of yesterday's cooking, perhaps onions or herbs, now softened and blended into the general aroma of home. Clara paused near the threshold of the kitchen space, simply standing, observing. The light was still indirect, painting the far wall in soft grayish tones. Shadows were long and indistinct, pooling in corners and beneath furniture. It was a moment of pure transition, the pause between night and day held within the quiet embrace of the cottage walls. The familiar shapes, the gentle scents, the profound quiet all combined to create a sense of deep peace, a foundation upon which the small rituals of the morning would be built. She took a slow, easy breath, the air cool and clean in her lungs, and then moved purposefully towards the kitchen counter, ready for the first gentle task of the day. The journey from bed to kitchen was complete, a short passage marked by quiet awareness and the comforting familiarity of her surrounding. Chapter 2. Kettle's Gentle Song. Standing at the simple wooden counter in the kitchen area, Clara reached for the ceramic kettle. It rested on its usual spot beside the stove, a comforting, rounded shape in the soft light. Its surface was smooth, slightly cool to the touch, and it had a pleasing weight as she lifted it, not too heavy, but solid, substantial. This kettle was an old friend, a silent participant in countless quiet mornings just like this one. She carried it the few steps to the sink, its base murmuring softly against the wood as she set it down momentarily. The stainless steel sink reflected the muted dawn light with a dull sheen. Turning the tap, she adjusted the flow until the water ran cool and clear. The sound filled the quiet kitchen, a gentle rushing noise, steady and soothing. She held the kettle beneath the stream, watching the water level rise inside. The sound changed subtly as the kettle filled, becoming deeper, more resonant. When it was sufficiently full, she turned off the tap, the sudden cessation of the rushing sound making the surrounding quiet seem even more profound. Droplets clung to the spout, catching the faint light like tiny jewels before she gave the kettle a gentle shake. Carrying the now heavier kettle back to the stove, she placed it carefully on the cast iron grate. The slight metallic sound as ceramic met iron was brief and clear in the stillness. Reaching for the knob on the gas stove, her fingers found the familiar ridges. A quiet click, followed by the soft whoosh as the flame ignited beneath the kettle, a small contained circle of blue fire beginning its work. The initial hiss of the gas was quickly replaced by a low, gentle hum as the burner settled into a steady flame, its light adding a small, warm focus to the cool tones of the early morning. With the water beginning to heat, Clara turned away from the stove. She moved towards the large window that looked out onto the small garden, sloping gently away from the back of the cottage. The light outside had grown stronger now, though the sun itself was still hidden behind the low hills to the east. The world outside was painted in soft blues and pale grays, the air looking crisp and cool. She rested her hands lightly on the windowsill, the wood smooth and slightly chilled beneath her palms. Her gaze drifted across the small expanse of lawn, still damp from the night. Every blade of grass seemed to hold a tiny bead of dew, catching the nascent light and sparkling faintly. Small, intricate spiderwebs strung between blades or clinging to the leaves of hardy shrubs were outlined in moisture, appearing like delicate silver lacework strewn across the green. A slight breeze, almost imperceptible, stirred the leaves on a nearby bush, causing the dew-laden surfaces to shimmer momentarily. It was a scene of profound peace, the quiet activity of nature waking up, untouched and serene. There was no sound from the garden yet, save perhaps the imagined rustle of those leaves. The birds had not yet begun their full chorus. She stood there for several minutes, simply observing. Her breathing was slow and even, her posture relaxed. There was nothing to do but watch the light change, watch the dew glisten, watch the world outside slowly emerge from the shadows. The familiar shapes of the garden, the curve of the path, the cluster of herbs near the back step, the silhouette of the old apple tree further down the slope were comforting in their permanence. It was a quiet communion, a moment of connection between the stillness within the cottage and the awakening world outside. Behind her, the kettle on the stove had begun to murmur. It wasn't yet a whistle, but a low, vibrational hum, the sound of water molecules stirring, growing warmer, preparing to transform. This gentle sound wove itself into the fabric of the morning quiet, becoming part of the atmosphere rather than disturbing it. It was a sound of anticipation, of a simple ritual about to unfold. Clara lingered at the window for another moment, absorbing the cool beauty of the dew-kissed garden before turning back towards the gentle song of the kettle, carrying the image of the quiet garden with her. The hum grew slightly louder, a steady, comforting presence in the heart of the kitchen. Chapter 3. Tea and Textures. The low hum from the kettle gradually intensified, rising in pitch almost imperceptibly at first, then more clearly. It transitioned from a murmur to a gentle, sustained whistle, not shrill or demanding, but a soft, clear note that seemed to hang in the quiet air of the kitchen. It was the sound of readiness, the water heated, the next step in the morning ritual, waiting. Clara moved back towards the stove, the sound guiding her. Reaching out, she turned the gas knob, and the blue flame vanished with a soft sigh, silencing the whistle almost instantly. The sudden quiet felt warm, expectant. She lifted the kettle carefully, feeling the pleasant heat radiating from its ceramic sides through the handle. Steam curled gently from the spout, momentarily clouding the air before dissipating. Carrying it back to the counter, she set it down on a small cork trivet, the soft material absorbing the sound and heat. Nearby, a small canister held loose-leaf herbal tea, a blend of chamomile, mint, and perhaps a hint of lemon balm, its subtle dry fragrance released as Clara lifted the lid. Using a small wooden scoop, she measured a portion of the dried leaves and flowers into a simple mesh infuser. Choosing her mug was another small, comforting part of the routine. From a shelf displaying a modest collection of earthenware, she selected her favorite, a sturdy mug, slightly wider than it was tall, glazed in a soft, muted blue that reminded her of a twilight sky. Its handle was comfortably rounded, fitting perfectly in her grasp. Years of use had softened its edges, making it feel uniquely hers. She held it for a moment, appreciating its familiar weight and smooth, cool surface before placing the tea infuser inside. Slowly and carefully, Clara poured the hot water from the kettle over the herbs in the infuser. The water flowed with a gentle gurgle, darkening the dried leaves instantly as they began to release their essence. Steam rose more thickly now, carrying the warm, soothing aroma of the brewing tea. The scent filled the small kitchen space, the calming sweetness of chamomile, the fresh lift of mint, the faint citrusy note weaving through it. It was a fragrance intrinsically linked with quiet moments, with relaxation and gentle comfort. She watched as the water swirled around the leaves, gradually taking on a pale golden hue. She left the tea to steep for a few moments, resting her hands lightly on the edge of the counter. Her gaze drifted around the familiar kitchen, the row of spice jars, the wooden utensils in a crock, the clean wiped surface reflecting the growing morning light. Everything was in its place, radiating a quiet sense of order and calm. The only sounds were the almost inaudible settling of the hot water in the mug and the continued soft breathing of the house itself. Outside, the first tentative chirps of birdsong could be heard, distant and melodic. After allowing sufficient time for the tea to infuse, Clara carefully lifted the mesh ball, letting the last few drops fall back into the mug before placing the damp infuser on a small saucer. The tea inside the mug was now a clear, inviting amber color. Lifting the mug, she cradled it in both hands. The ceramic was warm now. A deep, penetrating warmth seeped comfortably into her palms and fingers. It felt grounding, solid, a small vessel of comfort held between her hands. The rising steam gently brushed her face as she brought the mug closer, inhaling the soft fragrance once more. With the warm mug held carefully, she turned from the counter. Her destination was the small, sturdy wooden table positioned near the pantry doorway, a place perfectly situated to catch the morning sun. She walked slowly, mindfully, aware of the warm weight in her hands, the smooth floor beneath her feet, the quiet ambiance of the room. Each step was deliberate, unhurried. Reaching the table, she gently placed the mug down. The soft clink of ceramic on wood, a small, satisfying sound. She pulled out the simple wooden chair, its legs scraping faintly on the floorboards, and settled herself comfortably, ready to savor the tea and observe the unfolding morning. Chapter 4. Sunbeam Patterns. Seated at the small wooden table, Clara drew the warm mug closer. The chair beneath her felt solid and familiar, its worn wood shaped subtly by time and use. Outside, the sun had finally cleared the low eastern hills, and its light, no longer diffuse, streamed with gentle insistence through the open doorway of the pantry beside her. This wasn't the bright, direct glare of midday, but the softer, more angled light of early morning, carrying a warm, golden quality. It struck the cool stone floor of the pantry, illuminating its smooth gray surface. Where the light fell, it wasn't just a uniform brightness. It cast distinct patterns, crisp-edged shapes defined by the door frame itself, and perhaps the subtle mullions of a small, high window within the pantry space not directly visible from her seat. These shapes lay across the stone like pools of liquid gold rectangles, elongated rhomboids, shifting mosaics of light and shadow. The edges were sharp where the sunlight was direct, softening slightly where it diffused. It was a silent, transient artwork, painted by the sun onto the familiar canvas of the pantry floor. Clara took a slow, deliberate sip of her tea. The warmth spread from her lips, down her throat, a gentle wave flowing inwards. The flavor was mild, comforting, the blend of herbs soothing and familiar. She lowered the mug, holding it loosely in her lap, her gaze fixed on the interplay of light before her. Within the bright patches of sunlight on the floor, tiny dust motes, usually invisible, were suddenly revealed. They danced and swirled in the beams, caught in imperceptible air currents, rising and falling in a silent, mesmerizing ballet. Watching them felt like peering into a hidden miniature world, constantly in gentle motion, yet utterly silent. The patterns of light were not static. As the sun continued its slow ascent in the sky, the shapes on the floor shifted, almost imperceptibly at first. Then with more noticeable movement, an edge would creep slowly forward, lengthening a rectangle, while another shape might narrow slightly. Shadows adjusted their angles, stretching or contracting in response to the sun's changing position. It was a slow, quiet drama unfolding on the stone floor, a visual representation of time passing gently, marked by the silent journey of the sun across the sky. There was a profound peacefulness in observing this gradual, inevitable change. She continued to sip her tea intermittently, each taste bringing her back to the warmth in her hands, the subtle flavor, the comforting ritual. Between sips, her attention returned to the floor. She noticed the texture of the stone within the sunbeams, the slight variations in color, the faint lines and imperfections that gave it character, now highlighted by the direct light. The cool gray seemed warmer where the sun touched it, absorbing the light, transforming it into a gentle visual warmth. It was a study in contrasts, light and shadow, warmth and coolness, stillness and gentle movement. The air in the cottage remained quiet. The earlier bird song from outside seemed to have momentarily paused, leaving only the soft ambient sounds of the house, perhaps a distant settling noise, the faint hum that seemed to be the sound of silence itself. The aroma of the herbal tea still lingered faintly around her, mingling with the clean scent of the morning air drifting in. There were no distractions, nothing demanding attention, only the simple, profound presence of the moment, the warm mug, the gentle taste, the shifting light, the dancing dust motes. This quiet observation felt like a form of meditation. Her thoughts, if any, were fleeting and gentle, drifting past like the dust motes themselves, unattached, leaving no trace. Her focus remained on the sensory experience, the warmth, the light, the visual patterns, the subtle scents and sounds. It was an immersion in the ordinary, finding a deep sense of peace and connection within the simplest elements of her surroundings. The sunbeam patterns weren't just light on a floor, they were a reminder of the beauty in stillness, the wonder hidden in the everyday, the gentle rhythm of the world turning, witnessed from the quiet sanctuary of the cottage. She took another slow sip of tea, feeling the warmth spread, utterly content in the quiet light. Chapter 5. Quiet Beginnings. The last sip of tea was as warm and comforting as the first. Clara held the empty mug for a moment longer, feeling the residual heat through the ceramic, a gentle fading warmth against her palms. The sunbeams, relentless in their quiet journey, had now crept further across the pantry floor, leaving the area where they first fell in softer, indirect light, while illuminating a new patch of the cool stone. The intensity of the light seemed to have mellowed slightly, the golden hue perhaps a touch paler as the sun climbed higher. The dust motes continued their silent dance in the remaining shafts of light. With a soft, deliberate movement, Clara placed the empty mug back onto the wooden table. The gentle clink of ceramic meeting wood was a small, definitive sound, marking the quiet conclusion of her tea ritual. It resonated briefly in the stillness, a sound of completion, not ending. She rested her hands lightly on the table surface for a moment, feeling the smooth grain of the wood beneath her fingertips. The wood itself felt slightly warmer now, where the morning sun, angling through the main room window, had begun to touch it. Pushing her chair back gently, the legs whispering against the floorboards, she rose to her feet. There was a feeling of ease in her posture, a quiet readiness that came not from urgency, but from the settled calm established during her moments of observation. The simple act of sitting, sipping tea, and watching the light had imbued the start of her day with a sense of peace. She stood for a moment beside the table, letting her gaze drift toward the pantry doorway, now brightly lit. She walked toward the pantry, her steps soft on the wooden floor before transitioning onto the cool stone just inside the threshold. The stone felt different underfoot now, partly warmed by the sun, partly retaining its inherent coolness in the shaded areas. Inside the small space, the light was clear and bright, illuminating the contents of the simple wooden shelves lining the walls. Jars of grains, oats, barley, lentils stood in neat rows, their contents visible through the glass, textures of russet, pale gold, and speckled green. Tins and canisters bore simple handwritten labels: flour, sugar, rice. The light caught the subtle textures of everything. It touched the smooth curve of a glass jar, the slight roughness of a terracotta pot holding dried herbs, the weave of a small basket containing onions, their papery skins golden brown in the sunlight. The air within the pantry smelled faintly earthy, a combination of dried goods, cool stone, and perhaps the lingering scent of root vegetables stored in a bin in the corner. It was a simple, functional space, yet the clear morning light lent it a certain quiet beauty. Clara reached out towards a shelf, her fingers brushing lightly against the cool glass of a jar filled with rolled oats. The small action was thoughtful, unhurried. She wasn't yet deciding on breakfast, merely connecting with the space, with the potential held within these simple stores. Her gaze moved along the shelves, taking in the familiar items, the quiet order of the pantry. It was a place of sustenance, of preparedness, embodying a quiet form of domestic security. Standing there in the bright doorway, bathed in the morning sun, she felt the gentle warmth on her face and arms. It was a pleasant sensation, invigorating yet calming. She took another slow, easy breath, inhaling the unique blend of scents within the pantry. The quiet beginning of the day felt complete, yet also full of potential. The simple routines, waking, making tea, observing the light, had unfolded naturally, peacefully. Now, the next small step awaited, perhaps choosing those oats, perhaps deciding on something else entirely. Whatever came next would be approached with the same gentle awareness, carrying the stillness of the morning forward into the quiet unfolding of the rest of her day. The Sunbeam Patterns continued their slow migration across the floor, a silent measure of the peaceful passage of time in the Stone Floor Cottage.